that led to working for a company called Jetcopters, who was just starting to get involved in TV shows. They had a whole bunch of helicopters. A very wealthy gentleman owned the company. And we started flying for TV shows like Hunter and Fall Guy and A-Team, and we do little daytime things. Well, I happen to be one of the only guys in the company that had a SAG card. So I got to go fly these TV shows. And once again, it was like the dream come true. I'm getting paid all this money to go fly a helicopter, which I'd have done for free at the time. And I had brought and had a great time. It goes on in here, and this is kind of where it led into what we're here to talk about is Airwolf. The company at the time, as you know, Magnum PI was going on in Hawaii, and it was the product of Don Belisario, the writer, a very genius individual who had a few other very successful shows. But Magnum PI with Tom Selleck and all that thing was going on, and the stunt pilot at the time for that was a gentleman named David Jones. David was a well-known movie pilot. If you remember some of the names back in the days, the Frank Tallmans and Jim Gavin, David Jones, those were some of the early well-known movie guys who were doing, as helicopters got popular, were doing a lot of flying in the TV shows. Well, David was the pilot for Magnum PI, and he was flying that little 500, the one with all the stripes on it. And that was a very successful show, and that was going on and on. Well, when that ended, David Jones and Don Belisario were friends, and I guess there had been some talk about this helicopter show that Belisario was dreaming up, about this secret spy helicopter or whatever was going to come about, and how he was going to write that. It was a very long, a lot of back and forth and things of how that was going to go, and what they could do, and blah blah blah. Anyway, out of all that comes Airwolf. And I'm working at Jetcopters at the time just as a movie pilot and a charter pilot and flying this and that. Well, David Jones, Don Belisario got together with the owner of the company, which, as I told you, was a pretty wealthy individual at the time, Peter McKernan. And unbeknownst to a lot of us working there, they started to talk about building an Airwolf helicopter, what it was going to be, how it was going to look. And I wasn't involved in any of that at the time. I didn't even know it was happening. But David was the main helicopter pilot that would be the main guy for the show, flying, doing all the stunts. So sure enough, we're going along, and all of a sudden this 222 shows up, and that's what Airwolf was. It was an early A model Bell 222, absolutely beautiful stock helicopter, which they proceeded to totally strip down and began building Airwolf. They hired a gentleman, named Tom Patton, I believe it was, to build, as you know, all of the parts that you see on Airwolf, the side rockets, the rocket tubes, the fuel probes, the intakes. All of this was done on paper and was being built out of fiberglass and the stuff that was going to go on this helicopter. And I mean, when we saw pictures, it was just like, oh my God, thing's fabulous. It was beautiful. And sure enough, it started to take shape. And there was a lot of testing. David was doing testing on how it would fly, and the FAA was involved. And the truth of the matter is the thing flew phenomenally beautiful. It was very smooth, very responsive. And of course, it looked amazing. When it showed up, it was truly, all of us just couldn't believe it was there with us. So the show began to take shape, and the episodes were being written. Airwolf was being built. And we had heard the actors were going to be Jan Michael Vincent, Ernie Borgnine were the main players, Alex Cord. They were all going to, Jan was going to be the main pilot, Stringfellow Hawk. And okay, great. And then the rumor started flying around the company that there were going to be bad guy helicopters. There were going to be 500s and jet, all the bad guys that Airwolf would be taking out at some time during the show. So we were all chomping at the bit, hoping we'd get a chance to fly on some of those. And we did. There were several of us at the company that got to fly the bad guy helicopters. And once again, from my experience in the background, I had probably the most time and had experience with twin engine helicopters. So from the fire department, so I ended up being a natural backup in Airwolf, which was pretty great for me. So anyway, the show went on, and sure enough, it became a great hit. We'd go out. There was always a helicopter in the show. There was usually always a bad guy or a police helicopter or some sort of thing that Airwolf would have to entangle with, and if that's the right word. And we got to be very close to the actors and got to know them very well because, we were flying, even when Ernie or Jan was supposed to be flying, they built the phenomenal mock-ups over in the studio that Jan would actually fly. But there were times on the set when Jan would be sitting in the real helicopter that we'd had ways of, making it look like they were actually in there. Anyway, that's kind of how that all came to play. And then that went on for, as you all probably know, we had 3 seasons of Airwolf here in the States. And then when it ended, the 4th season went on in Canada, where they used a lot of stock footage of all the stuff that we had shot here in the States, intertangled with some things they did up there.